Friends, we are about to begin services at this time, so I would ask if everybody would please make your way quietly to your seats. We are going to bring the family in at this time as we begin our services today. And just a note, if you'd please make sure that any cellular phones, any other devices you might have that make noise are turned off or placed in the silent mode. Friends, again, at this time, we are going to begin services for Kathy Rosenbluh. If you have a cell phone or any other noise-making device, please make sure it is turned off or placed in the silent mode at this time. Officiating our services today is Rabbi Ari Hart, and the following are going to be acting as pallbearers today. We are going to ask that when the rabbi has concluded the service, just before El Malay, the rabbi will make an announcement as well again, that the pallbearers step to the back of the chapel. They are going to assist us in escorting Mrs. Rosenbluh back in the chapel temporarily for El Malay. And the following are acting as pallbearers today. That is Sharon Cernick, Barry Bennett, Liz Bennett, Bob Rubin, Stu Jacobs, and Jacob Shapiro. And again, that will be announced at the appropriate time during the service for the pallbearers to make their way to the back of the chapel. And at this time, we'll begin our services.
We're here this morning to mourn, to grieve, to honor a life taken from us way too soon. The life of Kathy Rosenbluh, Gittel, Bat Chaim Yehuda, Esther Sarah. Beloved wife of Michael, loving and proud mother of Yaakov, Meirav, and Mimi. Proudest grandmother of Judah, dear sister of Michael and George. It says the Gemara, Tsarat Rabim Chetzi Nechama. The pain, the tsar of many is half a comfort in looking at this room, a full room. I hope that there is a half comfort in the shared pain that so many of us feel at Kathy's loss. We'll begin this morning with Tehillim. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Roi Lo Echsar, Bino Deshe Yarbitzeni, Ame Menuchot Yina Leini. Nafshi Yeshovev, Yancheni B'Maglei Tzedek Leman Shemo. Gam Ki Elech Begeit HaMavet, Lo Yirora Ki Ata Imadi. Shivtecha Mishantecha, Hema Yenachamuni. Taroch Lefanai Shulchan Neged Torerai. Dishanta Vashem Roshi Kosi Revaya. Ach Tov Vachesed Yudufuni Kol Yemei Chayai. Veshavti Beveit Adonai Le'orech Yamim. A song of David, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God causes me to lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in righteous paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the lengths of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for length of days. This week we read in the weekly Torah portion, Parshat Shmini, the heart of the Torah. Talmud Masechet Kiddushin states that our parsha contains the exact middle words, the two middle words of the entire Torah. And the words describe Moshe's quest to find an answer to a question. They are darosh, darash, and Moshe searched deeply. The deepest point of the Torah, according to the Gemara, is to deeply search. And this was Kathy, a deep searcher, someone who went to the heart of every matter. Born to parents, Alexander Shandar and Etel, both survivors of the Shoah, both who lost so much and rebuilt their lives. They rebuilt their lives first in Hungary, and then in 1956, a revolution and a daughter at the same time. An immigration journey that brought them to Israel and to Chicago, not a simple journey, not an easy journey, but one where education and searching, darosh darash, was the guiding light. For Kathy at Erie Crown, where initially, because she did not know a word of English, they thought she was developmentally delayed, she quickly proved them wrong. Then continuing to the girls' school and then the beloved University of Chicago, where she made many lifelong friends. Her intelligence led to recruitment by DEC, an early pioneer in the new field of computer programming. They recruited her to work in Cambridge, and there she met her beshert, Michael. Married in Israel in 1988, 36 years of a beautiful partnership of so many dimensions, and that took on a profound new dimension in this last final chapter of her life, as you so powerfully and beautifully cared for her in that final chapter. A partnership that yielded so many memories and insights and learning and love, a partnership that yielded Yaakov, Meirav, and Mimi, of whom she was so, so proud. And in addition to family, Kathy's world included deep friendships and community, friends who loved and cared and respected her in Cambridge, in New Haven, Florida, and ultimately here in Chicago. And finally, an illness that she faced with tremendous courage, strengthened by the love and support of her family and her friends, making the most out of her time with us. There is so much to be doresh on Kathy, so much to seek, so much to speak about, her wisdom, her humor, her heart. And beginning today at the funeral and over Shiva, and in the weeks and months and years to come, we will do that process of doresh darash, of seeking out and learning and teaching of Kathy. This morning we begin with words from Michael, followed by Yaakov, Mimi, and Meirav, followed by Mickey and George, and then some concluding reflections in the Kelmali. Michael.
I'm going to apologize in advance. It'll be very difficult for me to get through this hesped without crying. I'm a person who feels very deeply about even small things, and this is a mountainous thing. Katikam, my dear, dear Kathy, how much I will miss you. I first noticed Kathy across the mechitza of the Orthodox Minyan at Harvard Hillel. I don't think that I initially analyzed what drew me toward her. I just felt her pull strongly. But after 36 years of marriage, raising 3 wonderful children together, and the intensity of our changing and intensifying relationship during her battle with brain cancer, I became much more acutely aware of her many appealing and endearing qualities. Kathy was much beloved by many of the people she knew well, and had many long and enduring friendships. She was interested in engaging in many topics, and this made it fascinating to talk to her, aided by her searing intellect and extensive knowledge of many, many topics. She had a special spark to add to the various study groups she participated in over the years. I would witness her questioning of assumptions and utilizing her extensive foundational knowledge to lead discussions and analyses. Others got the benefit of this for limited periods of time. I got to enjoy her thoughts every day that I know her, and I will miss her terribly. I also recently was struck by Kathy's strong sense of style. When she began to need my help getting dressed for going out, I noticed how she put herself together, insisting that things look good and contemporary, and fixing things to look just right. I must have noticed this too when I first became attracted to her, but never put my finger on this until recently. I just basked in her beauty. Because of her battle with brain cancer, Kathy and I were forced to condense our retirement together to the course of about a year. We celebrated the weddings of two of our children and watched in delight the growth of our grandson, Judah, who was 2 weeks old when she was stricken. Fittingly, she was on her bike on the way down to Lakeview to pay him and his parents a visit. We celebrated our 35th and then our 36th wedding anniversary and the 70th anniversary of my parents, Herb and Margot Stern, who traveled here from New Jersey to be with us today. Kathy and I traveled abroad, and we traveled locally. We traveled a lot to Rochester, Minnesota, to participate in a clinical trial at the Mayo Clinic. It was a delight to be in the car with her for 5.25 hours each way, just to have a chance to be together with her. Kathy had a beautiful voice and loved to sing, and until COVID, sang with the Skokie Concert Choir. I can still hear in my mind her beautiful voice. On Shabbat, she loved sitting around the table surrounded by friends and family, singing Zmirot. All of our children, 2 Thursdays ago, Meirav was with me, making sure that Kathy was okay. And at that point, she was going up and down the stairs on her own. She had trouble sort of walking since her recurrence. And we had brought up a CD player and CDs from our past history together as a family. And on the CD that we were playing was a CD of Ehud Banai. And while she was walking down the hallway to the stairs, we were listening to his rendition of El Adon. And Meirav was walking her down, and I greeted her at the landing. And we stopped there because it was hard for Kathy. She was also trying to hold on to something because she refused. She was Kathy, right? She wanted to hold that and was not going to listen to anybody else. So we had to stop at the landing, and we started singing along a version of Kel Adon that I often sing at Kol Sason when leading tefillah. And Meirav joined in, and Kathy joined in, and we danced on that landing to the last time that she was upstairs. On Shabbat, she loved sitting around the table, surrounded by friends and family, singing Zmirot. All of her children and I learned the Zmirot passed down from her father, and we will continue to honor her memory and joy when we are together singing around the Shabbat table. May her memory be for a blessing. Yehi zircha baruch. My children will speak next.
We had a few brief thoughts we wanted to share with you. I'll go first. Our mom had a towering presence in our lives and in the lives of everyone who knew her. She was a deeply committed thinker, a ceaseless advocate for challenging one's assumptions, and incredibly smart and knowledgeable. She was also someone who consistently took us and those around her seriously, and she demanded that we do so of ourselves as well. Through her example and her exhortation, she not only raised 3 children who believe in ourselves and appreciate the value of self-respect, but on top of this, she deeply impacted the lives of all of our friends who grew up with her as a role model too. She also knew how to appreciate every day as an opportunity to learn about and experience the world. At no point do I recall sharing my knowledge of anything with her without a list of additional reading suggestions she had before I truly understood what I was talking about. That drive to aim higher in learning has anchored in all of us an ability to think critically and to contribute to making the world a better place. That said, she certainly knew how to enjoy a day and find the small beauty in it, whether that be taking a bit of extra time for a cup of coffee in the morning on the way out of the house, or staying up just a little later to read more of a book she was into, or dive a little bit deeper into a stimulating conversation. One of the nicest things about the past few days has been hearing all the ways in which she has taught and shaped our close childhood friends, our cousins, and of course our spouses. We're so lucky to have had her influence on us and to have gotten to share her with all of you, and it's our great sorrow that we do not have more time with her.
As anyone who spent almost any amount of time with our mom knows, she never hesitated to tell you what she really thought and to disagree with you when she saw things a different way. It took me until well into adulthood to realize that this was not the way most people operate, and to appreciate how remarkable and special it was to know with certainty that my mom would share her genuine thoughts with you in every conversation and couldn't care less about what other people would think. She dignified whoever she talked to with the assumption that they deserved and could handle the unvarnished truth, and also with the unfounded assumption that they were as knowledgeable about everything from medieval Jewish thought to modern cultural history as she was. In every interaction, in every setting, she had the courage and conviction to be so reliably and entirely herself, and that's a model that I strive to live up to. That deep comfort with being herself, coupled with her vast knowledge, gave her an uncanny ability to zero in on the fundamental truth at the heart of an issue, even if the factual basis may not have been entirely accurate. But even if you had a better argument, she was almost always right. We will miss her powerful, challenging, insightful, and deeply loving presence immensely. Our mom really knew my siblings and I and had special, unique, and meaningful relationships with each of us. I take after my dad. I will be crying through this. We are all clearly cut from her cloth, but all in really different ways. It's nice that we're always together. Just as the apples don't fall far from the tree, the apples don't also fall very far from each other. Our mom raised us to really know and love each other, to have deep relationships with each other, and through that she created a family for us that is and always will be really close. We got to experience so much life with her, our childhoods, our teenage years, a little rough, our young adulthoods, and plus a little bit, and she got to experience that back. She saw all of us get married and build careers, lives, and communities around ourselves. She got to be a grandmother and a mother-in-law. She got hundreds of bike rides with us, Shabbat dinners, days sitting on the beach at every age and every stage that we've had. But her life was cut too short and too early. There's so many things she had yet to study and have an opinion on, and so many things that she just didn't get to experience and that we don't get to experience with her. She will be missing in everything that's yet to come for us, and she will be missed in every moment that we have together.
It was February in Jerusalem when we gathered together for the marriage of our son Michael and his bride Kathy. We already knew that he introduced us to a force of nature that had her own personality, her own extraordinary intelligence, and her own way of bringing together for us a family with 3 wonderful grandchildren and their partners that have filled out our life in a way that we could not have imagined when we started. She was full of her own ideas and her own particular capabilities. We all talk about her intellectual aspects, but Michael and Kathy were not married long before Kathy brought us a vest that she made for Margot, full of patches, full of color, full of uniqueness, that still hangs in our closet today and reminds us of what she brought into our life. She went through an awful period of time at the end of life that came much before it should have. But to the end, she had a dignity and a sense of herself that were amazing to imagine, to experience. She gave us an example of how to live and how to be part of the family that we treasure so much. She was, unfortunately, brought down too early. But even to the end, she had the life, the smile, and the mental ability to respond to us in an extraordinary, gracious way. We will miss her far more in the future than we now realize. And we wish her Tzeskom L'Shalom.
Our little sister is gone. She was little only in chronological age. She was really an intellectual giant, both in the breadth and in depth of an incredible number of topics and subjects, ranging from history to music to literature, Judaism, science, philosophy, and on. Kathy arrived in Chicago almost to the day 62 years ago. As a 6-year-old immigrant from a small rural village in Hungary, she grew up in the Chicago Jewish school system and went to the U of C for college, as you've heard from a number of people. Her immense accumulation of knowledge and her use of that knowledge to analyze and assess the world around her sometimes made it difficult for those not familiar with her to converse with her. I mean, she got into arguments, including with us and her parents. But to those of us who got to know her well, her abundant knowledge and analysis were often eye-openers to the world around us. Her family and a Yiddishkeit, which was open and inclusive, were very dear to her. We, her brother and my parents, her brothers and my parents, were enthralled when she introduced us to the man she had fallen in love with, Michael. Michael, who in the last part of her life dedicated himself to taking care of Kathy is the most wonderful brother-in-law one could ever imagine. Together they raised a beautiful family that most of you know and who were Kathy's pride and joy. It is a very sad day for me to stand here and eulogize my little sister. She was one to refuse to just accept whatever fate threw at her, but rather to shape it and change it to a better world and a better society. In much of her efforts, she succeeded, but in the final fight with glioblastoma, she lost the fight, though not without putting up a worthy battle to the disabling disease. We will sorely miss her, her wisdom, her love, her fine taste in so many things, her dedication to her immediate family, to the greater family, to the community, and to the Jewish people, are all so much needed in our troubled times, and will leave a hole that will be very difficult to fill. Yehi zichra baruch.
Kathy, our one and only sister, I know how you hated cliches, so I'll try to avoid cliches. We're confused, we're angry, we're shocked, we're in grief that you went away so soon. A spade is an opportunity to be honest, a virtue that you truly excelled in. So I will name what your being is for me and will continue even after your life. You had an ability to accept others, your nieces, your nephews, with true love, without any criticism. The Talmud says in Masechet Avot, I'll read this one verse in Hebrew, Yehoshua ben Parachia Omer, עשה לך רב וקנה לך חבר ודן את כל אדם לכף זכות. You should judge every person to the good, to have a good eye. You taught me personally a lesson about kaf zchut, having a good eye. The Torah says in Bereshit, again in Hebrew, Vayipach ba'apav nishmat chayim. When God created man, He put in his nose a soul, nishmat chayim, something of life. Vayihi ha'adam lenefesh chaya. I don't really know what that means, but it's clear that the word soul, nefesh, is connected to a physical linshom, to breathe. Once we stop breathing, life stops. Many words and conjectures, but we don't know what. What we do know is that your neshama, while in this world, added joy, richness, and belonging to our life, and you made a great impact by raising a wonderful family. May you rest in peace, and we thank you for having been a part of our life, and we will forever love you.
As a final tribute to Kathy this morning, I want to share a concluding teaching from a source that she, I think, knew well. This is from the final chapters of the Moreh Nevuchim, Rambam's Guide to the Perplexed, a classic book of Jewish philosophy that delves into reconciling philosophy and Torah and asks all the big questions, a work focused on discovering oneself in relation to God and the universe. If she were here, she probably would give me a hard time about how I'm going to teach it. So in her zchut. In the final chapters, the Rambam describes a palace. And I'm going to read from the Rambam here. I will begin the subject of this chapter with a simile. A king is in his palace, and all his subjects are partly in the country and partly abroad. Of the former, some have their backs towards the king's palace and their faces in another direction. And some are desirous and zealous to go to the palace, seeking to inquire in his temple and to minister before him. But they have not yet seen even the face of the wall of the house. Of those that desire to go to the palace, some reach it and go round about in search of the entrance gate. Others have passed through the gate and walk about in the antechamber. Others have succeeded in entering the inner part of the palace and being in the same room with the king in the royal palace. But even the latter do not immediately on entering the palace see the king or speak to him. For after having entered the inner part of the palace, another effort is required before they can stand before the king. The Rambam then goes to explain his metaphor. He says, the people outside are irrational beings, uneducated, unaware, not Kathy's people. Then there are those who desire the palace, but they are those who possess religion and belief but have false doctrines. They hold to false ideas. They're shrouded in illusion. They've misled. And then for those who desire to arrive at the palace and to enter it but have never seen it, are the mass of religious people that observe the divine commandments but are ignorant of the deeper ideas behind them. He says, only those who have succeeded in finding a proof for everything that can be proved, who have a true knowledge of God, so far as a true knowledge can be attained, and are near the truth, whenever an approach to the truth is possible, they have reached the goal and enter the palace in which the king lives. Whenever an approach to the truth is possible, as so far as true knowledge can be attained, coming close to the truth, this was Kathy. Darosh Darash, seeking wherever that approach to the truth is possible, in any subject, with any person. The Rambam goes on to say, my son, my daughter, so long as you are engaged in studying the mathematical sciences and logic, you belong to those who go round the palace and search for gate. When you understand physics, you have entered the hall. After completing natural philosophy, you master metaphysics, then you've entered the innermost court and are with the king in the same palace. I imagine Kathy in one of those innermost chambers right now, having studied mathematical science and logic and physics and computers and natural philosophy and botany and cooking and all the things she mastered. I imagine her there. Maybe she's there with the Rambam. Maybe the Rambam is giving a class. Maybe she's giving him a hard time. And the Rambam continues in those final chapters. He says, I have shown you that the intellect which emanates from God unto us is the link that joins us to God. You have it within your power to strengthen that bond, if you choose to do so, or to weaken it gradually. It will only become strong when you employ it in the love of God and seek that love. Ultimately for the Rambam, and I think ultimately for Kathy, to know and love God is to know and love the world that God created, to know and love its fruits, to know and love its beauty, to know and love its endless possibilities in a kitchen and in the garden, to know and love the book and the bicycle and the babies. In her final months, Mimi, you shared so beautifully how she turned that power of inquiry to her family, to her children, asking, how did you feel in that moment? What did this mean to you? Directing that power of mind, of knowledge, into your souls. And that love that she always had for all of you, for her community, for the world, grew brighter and brighter, grew more and more apparent in those final months. In the Avot, Rabbi Meir teaches, Kol ha'osek b'Torah lishma, anyone who studies Torah for its own sake, zocheh l'dvarim harbeh, merits many things. V'lo od ela shekol ha'olam kulo chadai hulo, really the whole world opens up for this person. Nikra Rea, he's called a friend. Ahuv, beloved. Ohev et hamakom, loves God. Ohev at briot, loves God's creations. Misameach et hamakom, brings joy to God. Misameach et habriot, brings joy to God's creatures. This is Kathy, learning Lishma, meriting so much, a friend to so many, bringing love to God and love to creatures, and bringing joy to God and joy to God's creation. Kathy, you've merited so much in such a short time. Amazing children and grandchildren, a devoted basheret, beloved friends and community. Kathy, you brought joy and love to God's creations. Darasht Tov, you searched well, you loved well, and our world was made profoundly better for it. We will miss you. Teheh nishmata tzura b'tzorah chaim, may your soul be bound up in the bonds of life. Kohanim are invited to step out now as Kathy's brought in.
Friends, again, at this time, we will ask those who are announced as pallbearers to please stand at this time and meet at the back of the chapel, where our staff will meet you, and they will assist in escorting Mrs. Rosenbluh back into the chapel for the purposes of El Malay. And upon completion of the El Malay, there will be a few brief announcements that we will make, after which we will all depart from the chapel and make our way to the cemetery. Friends, we'll ask everyone to rise if you're able for El Malay, and we're going to ask Jacqueline Stern to come forward. She will be leading us in the El Malay.
El Malay Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Ashchina V'Malok Kedoshim Utorim Kezohar Arakia Mazirin Et Nishmat Gittel Bat Chaim Yehuda V'Esther Sarah שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה. אנא בעל הרחמים אסיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן.
Friends, at this time, the pallbearers will be escorting Mrs. Rosenbluh back out of the chapel, and we just have a few announcements for those of you who will be joining us at either the Shiva or the cemetery. We are going to be making our way immediately in procession to Memorial Park. And if you are joining us, please make sure that you have your bright headlights and hazard lights on. And please make sure that you obtain a safety sticker from our staff and follow the car that is in front of you as closely as you can. All of the Shiva and davening information is available inside the folders you received when you arrived, and they will be available as you depart. For those of you attending via the live stream, that's also on our website. And finally, at this time, we are going to escort the family from the chapel, and we will see you at the cemetery for those of you who are joining us. Thank you.